This week on The Other Side, a horrific knife attack on a little Aussie girl on holiday in London. What is happening to our societies and how do we fix it? Peter Dutton hits back at leftist attacks after being slammed by Teals, Greens and Labor for standing up for Australia's national security. Free speech under attack at home and abroad, with one religious leader being hauled before the Human Rights Commission for daring to make up his own welcome to country. Elon Musk and Donald Trump get tens of millions of listeners for their big chat on X Spaces, and the mainstream media loses the plot. Raygun continues to amuse the world. We'll dig a little on that Olympic sensation. And we've got news about an exciting new way that you can help support this show. This is The Other Side. G'day Canberra, g'day London, g'day Australia. This is The Other Side for the weekend commencing Friday, the 16th of August, 2024. I'm Damien Curry. The Other Side is your weekly analysis of the best news and commentary to get you smart for the weekend and the week ahead without the woke, with a new show dropping on YouTube every Friday night at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. So people have been asking us for some time now how they can support the show. Well, this week I'm very happy to be able to announce that we have a way that you can support us and help yourself at the same time. I never want this show to be a charity constantly asking viewers for money, so I'm very happy to announce our new sponsor, Private Internet Access. With all the big government clampdown on online speech lately, you are taking a risk if you don't have a VPN. That's a virtual private network that blocks spying eyes in government or marketing from seeing your IP address and hacking into your data. Now it's super easy and cheap to set it up. It's not technical, even I could do it. And The Other Side has secured a special deal for our viewers, which will get you set up for 83% off the usual price and with 4 months free. And get this, that brings the price down to less than $3 a month. It is amazing. So jump on it now, sign up to our special deal and help support us by supporting our sponsors. PIAVPN.com. PIAVPN.com/other side. That's the important bit. /other side to get the special deal. So that's PIAVPN.com/other side. And even if you've already got a VPN, consider switching to these guys. Since I have, I've had zero reduction in my internet speeds, which was a bit of a problem with the one I was using before. And now I don't even have to think about this one. It's just on automatically whenever I'm on. So it's really great. PIAVPN.com/other side. The horror of London's rising knife crime hit home to Aussies this week with the insane and inexplicable stabbing of an 11-year-old girl from New South Wales in Leicester Square in the city's centre while she was on holidays with her mum. The 32-year-old man from Romania appeared in court Thursday, charged with attempted murder. Here's how the UK's GB News reported it.
She's now been identified as an 11-year-old with a mum tourist from Australia. Now, that is, what sort of signal does that send out to the rest of the world? And I was looking, in last year, 1.2 million Australians came to Britain last year, spending £1.6 billion. They're a huge part of our tourism.
And weren't Australia one of the countries that did put out a warning about travelling to the UK because of the riots and things like that? So it's just, you just can't imagine, can you, going on holiday, taking your child to the queuing outside a Lego store.
I can imagine it, actually. I've been a tourist in Leicester Square with my daughter when she was a little girl. This is a trauma that's going to impact this child and her mother for years.
She was stabbed repeatedly in the face and in the armpit, and it was a security guard nearby who disarmed. Well, I think he literally sat on the attacker and for 4 minutes until the police got there.
Young lad called Abdullah.
That's right, yeah, and he's been hailed a hero. It's an extraordinary story, but what a terrible thing for Mum, who was covered in blood as she was trying to save her daughter.
She was trying to protect her child. It's just the absolute horror of it, and that excitement of coming over on a holiday and this happening, and it's just, how does this happen? How is this still happening?
She's going to need plastic surgery because she was held in a headlock and stabbed 8 times with a steak knife.
Unbelievable. 20 years ago, this might have been one of the biggest news stories of the year in both countries. But it comes just a few weeks after 3 little girls were stabbed to death by a man from Wales in the northern English town of Southport, sparking violent anti-immigration riots across the country. While it's simplistic and silly to blame immigration generally for increasing crime in our two countries, and equally simplistic and silly to call the rioters and protesters far-right racists, we need to have a conversation about the complex causes of this alarming rise in knife crime and social tension. And yes, too many, too fast immigration is one of the causes. And no, it's not racist to say that. But the problem is much broader and deeper than just that. It's the ideology that permeates our politics, government, media, arts, approach to religion and God, education, sexuality, and even our view of the family. The wider ideology that underpins all policies and public and social debate, including, but certainly not limited to, immigration. Our societies are sick. We're not as bad as the UK, sure, but we're not very far behind. And the common thread is a decaying of traditional and, dare I say it, conservative values. In fact, I was taught all through my youth that conservative values were bad and backward and sexist and racist. And I'm not suggesting we return to any kind of sexism and racism here. But we may have thrown the baby out with the bathwater in becoming more progressive. Many conservative values were very good indeed, like humility instead of excessive pride, respect for elders instead of disdain for elders, the traditional family unit. It had some issues, but in essence, it works. Delayed gratification, personal responsibility, a respect for earned hierarchies, modesty in the way that we dress, and decorum and manners in the way that we behave, aspiring for a little bit of class and sophistication and style and grace, heaven forbid, a respect for the unknown and a humility around our achievements and limits to the human intellect, and dare I say it, a respect for God, or at least some kind of higher power, and the idea that profound order and design is at play in the universe. These are all fairly conservative ideas, and good ones. I also think drugs have a lot to do with the pure evil and insanity that we're seeing in these crimes. I think we've got a mental health crisis brought about partly by drugs, but also a culture drowning in ideological nonsense that leads to excessive permissiveness, tolerance of antisocial behaviour, and a decay in the enforcement of criminal law. It plays out in the anything goes culture in our media, where violence, criminality, and disgusting behaviour is all fodder for entertainment. Our heroes and villains and our heroes are villains and our villains are heroes in our TV shows. Our cinemas become shallow and thrill-focused, and the expression of our sexuality has become crass, vulgar, and revolting. It plays out in our inability to be certain of even the most basic ideas of right and wrong. We can't even define what a woman is, for God's sake. And it all ties back to one ideology: radical left-wing relativism. There are no right ways to act and behave. Everything is equally good. The fix can only come when our parents, our educators, our media, and our leaders in all walks of life really find the courage to grow up and lead, set wise boundaries and enforce them, stand up for what is right, and speak out even if at personal cost. As I said last week, immigration itself is not a bad thing. Most of us are the children of immigrants. But too fast, too many immigration is. And the UK and Australia have been riding that train like mad since COVID. 1.2 million new arrivals in the UK in 1 year alone. The same number in Australia across 2 years, and we've got less than half the population of the UK. Percentage-wise, that is recklessly irresponsible and frankly nuts. Now, Peter Dutton has called for an outright ban this week on arrivals from Gaza, and not surprisingly has immediately been branded as racist by Muslim groups and every Labor and Green and Teal under the sun, as 9 News reported this week.
Peter Dutton is raising the drawbridge.
I don't think people should be coming in from that war zone at all at the moment.
Since the October 7 attacks, 3,000 visas have been granted to Palestinians. 1,300 have arrived.
I think he is being essentially racist with those comments.
I think Peter Dutton's comments are irresponsible and dangerous.
Peter Dutton is the Tin Man. He has no heart. Australia should be doing more to help people who are fleeing this catastrophic invasion.
Ah, Monique. Anyway, the term racist is losing its power. It's simplistic, childish and dumb to call anyone who questions anything racist. So now they turn to heartless. Peter Dutton, though, is right. We can't afford to let people in from hostile war zones without careful vetting. It's sad for those who are peaceful families, but the reality is that the terror risk is very high. 1,299 of the 1,300 Gazans coming here could be wonderful people. But if there's just one Hamas sympathising terrorist among them, we're in trouble. The left are again pretending that everyone is the same. All cultures are the same and equivalent and equally valid and right. Everyone in the world shares our values and way of life and upbringing and hundreds of years of history. It is a naive and foolish worldview in the extreme. And the question we've got to ask ourselves is clear. How much longer are we going to let Labor and the Greens and those awful Teals gaslight us by calling us heartless racists simply because we want to say, whoa, hang on a minute, we're taking in people from a nation that's been run by a terrorist government for the past 15 years. We're the only country that can take them in? Are people in a remote island nation halfway around the world with a vastly different culture, language and heritage? Seriously? There's not one Muslim majority Arabic speaking nation in all of the Middle East that might be a better new home for these poor families? That's heartless and racist, if I say that? Well, according to our authoritarian Prime Minister, yes it is. And you will not say it, and you will be told, and you will do as you are told.
Community leaders, politicians, the media, watch your words, watch your actions. There's a direct correlation between inflamed language, inflamed tension and violence.
Oh, yes, sir, your almighty seriousness, sir. I don't want E. Karen coming after me. That's terrifying. Better watch what I say. Better watch what we talk about on this show. Better watch what we talk about online. And then the same politicians sit back and wonder, gee, why are there riots? Guys, it's not the conversation that's causing the riots. It's the lack of conversation. When will you politicians get it? One man does get it, even if some of the weaker fools in his own party don't. Did they just not see what happened to the Conservative Party in the UK, these wet Liberal Party members? Dutton is right. Just because the elites in the Canberra media and the chattering Teal classes and green commies and Labor lovies and liberal champagne sippers are saying mean things about you doesn't mean that the boss is not actually much more tapped into the actual views of many Australians. And he rightly slammed all the BS that's been thrown at him on the Today Show later in the week.
Pete, good morning to you. Good to see you. Are you a heartless racist? Do you have any humanity?
I just think all the usual political tribe, put it to one side. We have to make decisions, and they can be tough decisions, but the decisions that are in our country's best interests. And we have one of the most generous humanitarian programs in the world, but people go through checks and verifications before they come here. If we have a well-managed migration program, it can work in our country's best interests, and that's been our experience largely in the past. But what's happened here, Carl, is that the government has brought people in from a war zone. In some cases, they haven't even done face-to-face interviews, and that is without precedent. 1,300 people have come here on tourist visas, again without precedent, and this all happened under Andrew Giles, who of course has now been sacked as the immigration minister because he was the guy who released 152 hardened criminals from immigration detention when it turned out he didn't need to do so.
Exactly. Do you seriously trust this government to vet and monitor these immigrants properly? Anthony Albanese wouldn't even answer the question in Parliament on Thursday afternoon when he was called on to give the specifics of the vetting process for those Palestinian refugees. The PM just repeated over and over that the visa processing safeguards haven't changed since the coalition was in power. But Mr Dutton says the process hasn't been applied as it should be. With all this government crackdown on freedom of speech and digital IDs and marketing companies manipulating your information, you'd be crazy not to have a virtual private network on your laptop and phone. In fact, all your devices. I was once a bit afraid of how these things work, that they might slow down my internet speed or be too complicated to set up, but private internet access is terrific. And when you buy from them, you're supporting the other side too, because they're one of our sponsors. So to help keep yourself safe from big government and big corporations with a VPN from PIA, we've done a fantastic deal for other side viewers. You'll get 83% off the usual price and 4 months free, bringing it down to a low $2.68 a month. Amazing. You just got to use the special access code on your screen right now. That's piavpn.com/otherside. It's super easy to download and get running. It literally takes just a few minutes, and it's always on, and it didn't slow down my internet speed one bit. The side benefit is that I can now watch Netflix using my Netflix account as if I'm in any country in the world, which opens up the whole global Netflix library to me. And best of all, by using PIA, you're supporting the other side in a big way and helping us to keep on providing an alternative to the mainstream media focused on Australian news. piavpn.com/otherside. Get on it, help us out. What's wrong with the Indigenous Welcome to Country? It's harmless. It shows respect for our Aboriginal people. Why is it such a problem? And if you don't want to do it, you're just a racist, right? Well, no, wrong. The Welcome to Country is pretty sinister. Forget whether or not it's based on real Aboriginal history or is made up. Forget the debate about whether Aboriginal ancestors on this land even had a concept of country as we know it. The Welcome to Country is a trend that's well past its use-by date. In fact, it's past its abused-by date. It's overdone, it's a virtue signal, and it's making more and more people uncomfortable every time it's used. Every time a Qantas plane lands, every time a class starts at a university these days, any major public event. Now let me explain. The reason it's bad isn't because of what it says, but what it does not say. It's subtext. There's two main problems with it. First of all, the embedded message is, this is not your country. By repeating that over and over and over again, especially to young kids in schools, and making them repeat it, well, it's the oldest indoctrination trick in the book. It creates a sense of not belonging. The idea that if you were born here after 1788, you're not Indigenous to this land when you are. So it's a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. It also creates a false sense that you shouldn't even be here and that you owe other people with other ancestors something. Again, that's just not right. It's a political lie. More disinformation. Australia, the nation, was built by all of our ancestors, thanks. And a nation is much more than just land. Secondly, it leaves a lot of stuff out about other elders to whom we should really also be paying our respects, like our World War I and World War II veterans, for example, of all races. So it's inherently racist and divisive. It divides us into two people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, not based on where we were born or where we're citizens, but based on where our distant ancestors were born. Again, more disinformation spreading like wildfire, dressed up as something nice and virtuous when it's anything but. Again, it's the left being divisive while pretending to be kind and inclusive. Lots of my old lefty friends are waking up finally. More every day. Are yours? They're starting to see the upside-down world that we're being sold into, the racism of so-called modern anti-racism. One man who dislikes this performative ritual as much as I do and agrees that it is time to let it go is Christian leader and organiser of the church and state conferences around the country and the Good Source website, Dave Pellowe. Dave has been having some troubles of his own lately and he joins us now to explain. Dave, it's been quite a week for you. Before we get into what's happened, and we've got a really big announcement to make shortly, so I want people to hang in for that, but just tell us firstly, what happened?
So it's been more than a big week. I guess it has become a big week because we've announced what's been happening in secret since the event. So the event happened in May, and it was the first stop in a tour of marginal seats in Queensland, a political tour. undertaken in partnership between church and state and the Australian Christian Lobby to speak to Christians who are interested in Christian teaching on the important issues at the upcoming Queensland election.
Right.
It's my custom to welcome everybody and acknowledge the owner of the country that we're meeting on today. Psalm 24 verse 1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it." And of course, everybody in the room is rather relieved that I'm not doing an Aboriginal ritual, but a biblical ritual.
Okay.
And some people will laugh, some people will clap, some people will say amen. At the end of this first meeting, somebody got up and asked me a question, aren't you afraid of offending Indigenous people? And so I gave very strong teaching on the differences between traditional Aboriginal religion. By the way, only 2% of Aboriginals in the statistics, in the Australian Bureau of Statistics, only 2% of Aboriginal people identify as participating in that religion. 54% identify as Christian.
Yeah, we're one people.
We're one nation, go figure. And that's the way it should be. But the politics problems aside, and there are, there's theological problems with it, and you would expect to hear about theological problems from a Christian teacher in a Christian teaching meeting to Christians.
So what happened? You got complained about?
Yeah, so this person essentially said my characterization, which is 100% accurate and factual, of the philosophical categories of Aboriginal religion, which is animism and paganism.
You said that. You said it was animistic and paganistic.
I said, yeah.
Which is, you would say, is technically correct. I mean,
Yeah,
okay, so you went all out on that, and that is your right, you would think, even though
even
I
if
might
I was
disagree
wrong
with you, and even if you were wrong, exactly, even if you were completely wrong, and even if you could be wrong, I should be able to disagree with you. You should be able to say things that are an opinion that I think is horrible. That's what a free country is. That's what free speech is. So what happened? Did you got complained about by this person to the Queensland Human Rights Commission?
Yeah, this person said they felt set upon, humiliated and vilified on the grounds of their religion, which I thought they were Christian, and their race. And you know what? I don't know how that's even possible. In fact, I call it a fabrication, because I never mentioned anything about anybody. I didn't speak to anybody or about a group of people. I spoke about a set of ideas. And that's what my comments were directed at, and I won't back away from it.
Well, once upon a time, if I disagreed with you, and we do disagree, you and I, we've disagreed many times on things, I would just say, well, we disagree. Why do I have to why would you go to a Human Rights Commission unless you were launching some sort of
And the perfect example is...
Sorry, just explain for people, because I don't think people get it. This could happen to any of us, right?
That's why I'm actually drawing attention to this, is because this is such a frivolous complaint. I'm actually confident that unless we get some kind of activist commissioner adjudicating the issue, then common sense should prevail. But the problem is that there is no test for frivolousness. There is no bar that a complaint has to meet to be accepted, other than, is it in the category of complaints we accept? And then the target has to go through all the stress, all the expense, all the anxiety, perhaps years of mediation, conciliation and hearings if you refuse to submit and surrender to the demands of the complainant. This is a sort of government.
And on top of that, Dave, just I want to point out, guess who's paying for it?
Exactly.
The taxpayer. We're paying for this bureaucratic garbage. We reached out to the Human Rights Commission of Queensland and we got no reply. That's how accountable they think they have to be. So we give you an opportunity, Human Rights Commission, welcome to come on the show. We give you the opportunity to reply this week, perhaps, if you have a media relations person, which I think you do. But we need to hear your side of the story on this. But this is unacceptable. This is getting ridiculous. We are harassing people. It's the punishment is the process is the punishment.
That's right.
Right? We are harassing Australian citizens for expressing opinions. Where does this lead? It's a slippery slope. We've had enough, essentially. Now, are you okay? What happens next?
Look, it does. I mean, this isn't my daily routine to be accused of racism and human rights violations. So yeah, it took me a couple of days to. I was actually on tour, travelling, trying to teach the Word of God and the truth about political issues facing Queenslanders that we should be concerned about, real justice issues. And it was a distraction for absolute sure.
Well, I've had enough. This stuff's got to stop in Australia completely. Right. And we need to push back hard. We haven't pushed back for years. We haven't pushed back for decades. We're pushing back now. Okay, so please, we've got something to announce. Dave, you want to do that? Just tell everybody what's happening on Tuesday night. Not mucking around here. You're moving fast on this. So
yeah,
we're going to give them a shock they've never had.
We're moving fast on this, and urgently we are going to be holding a telethon, a 3-hour non-stop free speech event called Defending Democracy. And we are going to have some of the highest caliber, best speakers from politics, from journalism, from academia, from independent media. And the goal of the telethon over 3 hours is to raise $1 million. Now, I don't need $1 million for my defence. It might not take very much at all. Hopefully common sense prevails and it's dealt with quickly. But of course, the process is the punishment. And so we need the Human Rights Law Alliance, who is the only law clinic in Australia doing pro bono work for the defence of religious freedom, as well as the freedom of speech for non-religious people, against this grievance industry. And it is an industry, and it is taxpayer funded against most people's consciences. And so we need public servants and teachers and foster parents and other such people who have no voice and no influential friends to have the shield of the Human Rights Law Alliance well funded before the complaint is made against them, so that they don't have to go through the stress and anxiety, and their families don't have to go through the stress and anxiety of being accused of wrongdoing when they're completely innocent.
It's the heavy hand of the bureaucratic state coming down into people's lives, ordinary Australians' lives, and just irritating the living daylights out of us.
Yeah.
And it's happening more and more and more. It's a subtle, revolting kind of decay in our culture, I think. And we're seeing it. In fact, Justice Gorsuch, I don't know if you saw this, and I'm going to run some of this on the show next week, I hope, but Justice Gorsuch is one of the Supreme Court judges in the United States.
Yes.
Very esteemed man. He's come out with a new book called Overruled about this very thing, the fact that bureaucracy is out of control. We have too many laws. There's too many people trying to interfere with people's lives and play politics with the law and lawfare, and we've really got to get a handle on this and stop it. So the pushback starts right here with this bloke. Well, there's been others, right? We've had many cases in the past, but you're a humble man. I know you would never say that.
And we'll have a whole bunch of them on. We'll be talking about Lyle Shelton's case, which is still going through the Queensland grievance industry for 4 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars this can run into, and Lyle Shelton, innocent accused, being forced to fund his own defence. If it wasn't for the shield of the Human Rights Law Alliance, his important political voice would be silenced and would be censored by this pernicious industry. And so we've got to raise $1 million and millions of dollars for the Human Rights Law Alliance. Everybody just needs to give a little bit. So that'll be embedded live on the Church and State website on Tuesday night, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 to 8 p.m. Western Time. That's churchandstate.com.au. We'll have a link or an embed on the front page with all the details being populated there. We've got Warren Mundine and Daisy Cousins and George Christensen and a countless of other high-profile, high-caliber speakers, academics like Professor James Allen and Professor Gabriel Moons, Professor Augusto Zimmerman, all constitutional law professors. We're not shooting from the hip like drunkards. This is sober, analytical, careful critique of the destruction and damage that's being done to democracy. And so we're going to, in 3 hours, raise $1 million to defend democracy.
Great. Well, I'll be there. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to having you host the evening with me in our little studio.
All right, mate.
And we'll bring in as many people as we can for a lot of short speeches on defending democracy and all the ways it's been corrupted by successive governments.
Thanks for your time, Dave.
Thank you so much, Damien.
Good to see you. Now it's time for a little story. The story of a 26-year-old father of three living in a country where the government will punish you for what you post on social media, even if you're just reposting something someone else said. This particular country isn't Australia, but Australia could become like this other little country on the other side of the world if we're not careful. In this rather oppressive regime far away, this man was found guilty of retweeting something bad that someone else had posted, and he was jailed for more than 3 years. That's right, 3 years. A father of three will not see his kids, and those kids won't have a dad for 3 years because of a retweet. Not only that, the family lives in government housing and will now lose their home. So the wife and kids will also suffer. You may be wondering where this oppressive, horrible regime is. What sort of sick country would do this to its citizens? What sort of sad, twisted, perverted idea of justice does this backwater nation have? Well, the name of this little backwater nation is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It's a funny place because it used to be the home of great thinkers and philosophers and was once heralded as one of the most enlightened cultures and civilizations on Earth. But something very odd has happened lately, it seems. 26-year-old Tyler Kay was the man sentenced to 36 months jail last Friday, just 2 days after being arrested, and a day after he admitted a charge of publishing material intended to stir up racial hatred. The UK Independent newspaper reports that Kay copied and pasted part of a tweet originally posted by a woman by the name of Lucy Connolly. Her tweet was bloody awful. It said, "Mass deportation now, set fire to all the effing hotels, full of the bastards for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it." Well, yes, it does make you racist and in need of some serious self-reflection and possibly psychiatric care, Lucy Connolly. Interestingly, Connolly is the partner of a local Conservative council politician. She herself was arrested for that tweet and later bailed to reappear. But here's the interesting little twist to this story. Lucy had already been arrested for the post when young Tyler copied and pasted part of that and retweeted it. He was apparently trying to prove that he wouldn't be arrested because he isn't a traditional white person. He made this very, very clear in a reply to the post, stating, "My point is more, it's one rule for some and another rule for others," just showing part of the two-tier policing. Stupid, yes, but in a common sense country with common sense laws and common sense enforcement and common sense judges, he'd get maybe a warning and a slap on the wrist. But not in modern Britain. Oh no. In court, while in the witness box, Kay tried in vain to explain that he was not racist and was quite happy to be part of a multicultural town. He said he disagreed with Mrs. Connolly being arrested for her opinion, and so I copied and pasted the tweet into X, he said, kind of as a protest, not expecting much to come of it. And in normal times, in a normal Great Britain, not much would have come of it. But these aren't normal times, and the UK is anything but normal these days. This guy wasn't actually jailed for incitement. He was jailed for the greatest crime of offence to the left of all, racism. Commenting on the case, Detective Chief Superintendent Rich Tompkins said, "I hope this case sends a very clear message to people who think they can hide behind a screen and publish hateful, racially prejudiced posts without consequence." The sentencing judge herself seemed to be motivated strongly in her comments by the fact that she believed that Kay was really a racist. Racism is a mindset, a horrible, awful, and very dumb one, actually. But last time I checked, it wasn't a crime to be dumb or a racist, only to act violently upon that mindset and be a moronic thug. But we're jailing people now for thinking and saying bad, dumb things in the UK, and that worries me a lot. There were many other cases this week of people being sent to prison under Keir Starmer's authoritarian Labor Party regime for what they posted or reposted online. 26-year-old Jordan Parler of Leeds copped 20 months in prison for incitement. He seems to be a jerk of massive proportions, and he admitted urging others to target a building housing more than 200 asylum seekers and refugees. But 20 months for a thug's dumb social media post? Seriously?
The initial post received 6 likes. However, it was sent to your 1,500 Facebook friends, and because of your lack of privacy settings, will have been forwarded to friends of your friends. The messages were therefore spread widely, which was plainly your intention. In response to a post questioning why, you wrote, "Because they're over here. Given life of Riley, off the tax us hard-working people earn, when it could be put to better use. Come over here, with no work visa, no trade to their name, and sit down and doss, and then there's more people being put out homeless each year. They get top band priority on housing and many more reasons. This offence is so serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable." Would you stand, please? The sentence that I pass has been reduced by 1/3 to reflect your guilty plea. The sentence is one of 20 months imprisonment. You will serve up to 1/2 of your sentence in custody before you are released on licence.
Well, that should calm everything down, Judge. Good job, you. Good job, British criminal justice system, and good job, Prime Minister Starmer. How comfy are those new Doc Martens, Starmer? I mean, there's no doubt this offence was awful, but was it custodial sentence awful? And 20 months? Are you really trying to calm things down? Or are you trying to heat them up, maybe? In a third case, a 21-year-old from Sunderland who posted videos of himself roaring encouragement at rioters on his Instagram account was jailed for 2 years. In most countries that uphold the principle of free speech, the right to be an idiot, say awful, horrible, ridiculous, hurtful, hateful, offensive, and downright bloody awful things is protected to a large extent. Why should people be allowed to say horrible things? Well, for a couple of reasons. The main one is the problem of who gets to decide what is and isn't horrible. Once you give the state or any government power over speech, thought and expression, it becomes very likely that they'll use that to police political speech that they don't like. And that is what Britain is doing. You don't have to incite actual violence. Just incite racial hatred, an inner feeling state in other human beings, and you are a criminal.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence. And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
Oh, lovely. All very polite. We'll take you away from your family and lock you in a cage for a few years, and we'll send your wife and kids to ruin, but we'll do it very politely, very elegantly. We've got teams of police officers working on this. Oh yes, they're splendid. Because we're the kind and compassionate left. What was it Ronald Raygun said about tyranny coming wrapped in good intentions? But of course it can't happen in Australia, right? E-Safety Commission, anyone? You can catch us here on The Other Side every Friday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It is free. Just hit the subscribe button and a little bell too, and that'll notify you when we post anything. Also, if you're feeling generous, feel free to send us a super thanks donation. You can do that by clicking the little $ thanks icon under the video frame on YouTube. You may need to go to the 3 little dots and open up the menu there. You can also follow us on X, that's Twitter, at The Other Side on X. And don't forget to also sign up for private internet access, piavpn.com/otherside. That will also help us out if you purchase that and get onto the virtual private network. It all helps. Incitement to violence is a valid crime. Incitement to hate or offence itself, are they crimes? Can an emotion or thinking or a state of mind be a crime? Well, according to the political left, yes. And they've made no bones about encroaching slowly on the right to freedom of speech and thought in recent years in the UK and Australia and other parts of the formerly free West. Even in America, where free speech is enshrined in the Constitution, there's been talk. It's time now that we seriously push back on all of this while we still can. Freedom of speech is the fundamental freedom. You lose the right to speak freely and all other freedom is lost. Even laws restricting incitement to actual violence can be dangerous if not managed carefully by the police and our courts. We need to tread very carefully as the Orwellian overreach we're seeing in the increasingly authoritarian state of the UK should be teaching us all this week. For example, what if someone makes a hyperbolic overstatement meant metaphorically? Like, I don't know, I wish someone had chopped that bloke's head off. Irresponsible, yes, but if you didn't mean it literally, it is not incitement to violence. And then who gets to decide? That's the issue. I don't know about you, but those very polite, well-educated lawyers in gowns sitting on the bench in the UK courts locking young men up for 3 years for social media posts, they don't impress me with their good judgment or common sense. And if our law schools here in Australia are any indication, as the University of Queensland Professor of Law James Allen told me on this show last year, in 25 years the Australian courts are going to be filled with left-wing educated judges, not in the slightest bit hesitant to let their political bias influence them, justifying it later on with the rule of law somehow and legalese that sounds very balanced and fair, intelligent, scholarly and well considered, but which is actually stacked in one political direction, theirs. It's where all this can lead that's the worry. It's the slow burn, the loss of our liberty by gradual encroachment, the creeping arm of the state, slowly, bit by bit, incrementalism. Communists love incrementalism, a point made quite clear by Joe Rogan on his show this week.
Even if you say, yeah, well, people shouldn't tweet hateful things. I agree. They shouldn't. But who's to decide what is a hateful thing?
That's the problem. It's
That's
subjective.
the problem. It's very subjective.
And it still shouldn't be a crime.
And in our lifetime, we've seen that get moved, right? So it used to be if a guy thought he was a woman and his name was Doug and you grew up with Doug and all of a sudden Doug wants to be called Debbie, if you call him Doug, it's no big deal. Like, yeah, maybe you're being rude to call him Doug, but it's not a hate crime, okay? Well, now a lot of people think it's a hate crime, and that got you banned from Twitter for life. So if you dead named someone on the old Twitter, you are banned for life. Dead name, not even making up a name. You can call him an idiot. You can call someone an idiot. Okay, forget about a man in a dress. Maybe that's a problem. But if you call like a regular guy an idiot, you stupid fuck, fine, no problem. But if you call Doug, you will get banned for life. Okay, that's the new hate speech. That's crazy. Now, if that keeps going, that didn't exist before. If that keeps going, maybe you can go to jail for calling him Doug. Maybe they think it's okay to put you in jail because you violated their hate speech laws.
Conservative politicians in the UK, and I mean the truly conservative ones, not the wets in the party that has that name, they're worried. Newly elected deputy leader of the Conservative Reform Party, Richard Tice, had this to say on the UK's Talk TV this week about Keir Starmer's approach to all of this in his first month as Prime Minister.
What Starmer is doing, he is creating a sort of police state where people are now terrified what they put on social media. I'm starting some of my tweets, slightly ironically, just to wind a few people up. If this is true, ... in recognition of a lady who put out a tweet that was turned out to be erroneous, and she put, if this is true, ... and yet she's still been arrested. Free speech is now seriously under threat on social media because of the sense of fear that is being created. And what they're actually trying to do is to suppress and to label and to smear anybody who wants to talk about difficult, sensitive issues around immigration, be it legal or illegal. This is going to get a lot worse over the coming months, based on what we've seen just in the first few weeks. You are going to see changes to the online safety laws, and what we've seen in Scotland will be coming down to England, I fear, with sort of hate crime legislation online. And this is, as I say, it is a way of suppressing debate about sensitive, really strategically important issues for the country, but the last thing the Labour Party wants to talk about, which is how do you stop the boats? How do you stop the illegal migrants coming over? Over 800 in just the last 2 days alone.
Deputy Leader of the UK's Reform Party, Richard Tice, on UK Talk TV this week. Another reason we allow mean, horrible speech is that if we can't hear the disgruntled among us, how do we know to be wary of them and to criticise them back? And how do we know that people are that angry in the first place and to try to do something about it if we're in power? Riots and revolutions don't come because people have access to social media. There were riots and revolutions long before social media. They come when leaders stop listening to the people, when the people feel like they no longer have a voice. As Nigel Farage pointed out last week in a clip we showed you on this show, our parliamentary systems and our courts were set up to give people a platform and a voice to avoid violence, riots and war, as was the principle of a free press. But if all those institutions get taken over by elitists who don't listen, then eventually the kettle will boil over. And you can't fix things by blaming the kettle, Kia. As I said on the show last week, or Elbow, by the way, as I said on the show last week, there are real underlying problems here. We need to be able to have discussions about immigration, because if we don't, we then fuel racism. You can't just shut down debate because you don't like it and then get upset when the extremists, the real racists, hit the streets and get violent. You want to avoid an all-out civil war? You need government that listens and institutions that people have respect in and feel heard by. So I ask those of you watching who think that to criticise Islam or Islamic states is automatically Islamophobic, or that to criticise Judaism or Israel is automatically anti-Semitic, and those who want to debate about our heritage and culture just immediately shut down. I ask you whether a discussion like this one, featuring the erudite scholar Peter Hitchens several years ago, should be shut down because it might offend someone.
I would not want this country to be a Muslim country because I would not want it to be subject to Sharia law. I don't like the Muslim attitude towards women. I don't like generally the consequences of Islam in politics. I have disagreements with Islam, which are fundamentally Christian disagreements with Islam.
So let me ask you a question.
Well, hang on a minute, because I know you've had your polemic and
okay, go for your polemic now.
Interventions. Let me just make a point as to why this should remain a Christian country. Our laws, customs, traditions, language, music, architecture, diet, everything you care to name, these are all based upon Christianity. If Muslims want to live here, I'm very happy for them to do so. I regard them as allies, actually, in the battle against the awful moral decline that we face. But they have to accept that it is fundamentally a Christian country and integrate into it as such.
Peter, you need to live the 21st century where we are today.
Well, that's exactly where
Why does it have to change?
Was that hate speech? Was it Islamophobic? Of course it wasn't. So let's be very, very, very careful with any kind of disinformation and misinformation laws. In fact, let's forget the idea of them altogether, and let's get rid of the E-Safety Commission. And this is where I would strongly criticise Peter Dutton. Peter Dutton's role is to be the leader of the opposition, and he's shown a lot of strength lately in standing up on some major and important issues. But Peter Dutton needs to go a step further and be loud and clear and definitive about the fact that he will shut down the E-Safety Commission, even though it was the Liberal Party that set it up. It has failed. It was set up as a children's E-Safety Commission. It has become a dominant, intrusive organisation now that's prying on adults, and we need to shut it down. It needs to go. And he also needs to be very clear that he will shut down and stop the progress and just eliminate any idea whatsoever of misinformation or disinformation laws. Free speech is too precious to risk being left in the hands of those who like to control others. People whose personality leads them to professions like politics, policing, the law, and the bureaucracy. As wonderful as these people might be in so many other ways, they should be the last people that we trust as the guardians of free speech. Before Elon Musk took over Twitter and turned it into X, the site was driving so-called progressive ideas very hard in Western countries, especially the Great Awakening, the transgender movement, and the Black Lives Matter movement, and the protests and riots that resulted from it. So says Ed West, a British social commentator and writer, in an article for his Substack in The Spectator magazine this week. West explains that this was because Twitter users came from a very specific socially radical section of society. Because there was social pressure to conform to certain progressive views, West writes, there was a general drift of society and thinking to the left. The organisation itself and its employees had a progressive tilt, and its system of moderation was clearly run in a partial way, in particular with users being banned for pointing out biological facts. It was this, West notes, that drove Elon Musk, a vehement opponent of what he calls the woke mind virus, to buy the site. Musk introduced a free speech policy that encouraged far more right-wing users to join, and even amnestied many who'd been previously banned, as well as reversing the shadow banning rumoured to suppress some users. West says that now, following the riots in the UK, Musk is at war with the British government over free speech, repeatedly tweeting about two-tier Kia and some of the harsh sentences handed out after the riots. This has led to those in the British political class looking for someone and something to blame for the riots, other than their own stupid and reckless immigration policies and lax policing and management of social issues. Jessica Seymour, a prominent human rights lawyer, has suggested that Twitter be closed down in the UK. Lovely. Ed West notes that in 2016, Seymour was Britain's nominee for judge at the European Court of Human Rights. How surprising. Even some journalists have suggested that Elon be banned from Britain. And a senior police officer has said that Americans could be extradited over their social media posts. Others compare Twitter under Musk to Paris under Nazi occupation. Talk about stretching it a bit. And could you imagine a world where we couldn't respond to these criticisms because we were censored? West writes that blaming communication technology for unrest is nothing new. Printing certainly unleashed the Reformation, as well as fueling the witch crazes, he says. The French Revolution followed a sudden and rapid explosion in newspaper consumption among Parisians in the late 18th century. The turmoil in America in the 1960s was directly linked to the spread of television. Facebook spread the Arab Spring. The Birmingham riots in 2005 were blamed on pirate radio stations, and the 2011 London riots were attributed to BlackBerry. Yet despite all that, West writes, actual evidence of a misinformation epidemic is very thin. Elon Musk hosted an X Spaces interview with Donald Trump this week that nearly broke the internet. Well, it kind of broke Twitter at least. And the mainstream media had a fit. It was a 2-hour audio-only discussion between Trump and Musk, and it's attracted reportedly more than 1 billion views. Some are saying that's not accurate, but even if it was hundreds of millions, that's still something. So let's be very honest, folks. The real reason that politicians are calling for misinformation and disinformation laws all over the world, and the real reason that the mainstream media are backing those calls, is that they can't stand the fact that you don't need them anymore. They cannot stand the fact that you have the power to get your information directly, and they don't get to be the gatekeepers and control everything anymore. More people watch clips online from this show than they do from many mainstream media channels. And we're a tiny independent operation with a shoestring budget. So when Elon and Trump sat down for a chat, CNN lost its mind.
I want to play one exchange that was kind of classic. Well, there were a lot of exchanges that were classic Donald Trump, but this one really stuck out to us.
And Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So
right,
it's really not something that, you know, so it's not as scary as people think, basically.
So that was more Elon Musk than Donald Trump talking about, sort of suggesting that what happened almost 80 years ago, I think 80 years ago next year, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, now it's okay. Kind of trying to blow off the impact of that.
Now, look, I know that CNN is god-awful and biased, but this has even stunned cynical old me. CNN has just completely taken that out of context and overlaid a meaning on it that they know is wrong. Point blank, deliberate lying. Firstly, as she noted there, it was Elon talking, not Trump. So why they would use this clip is a bit odd in the first place.
So that was more Elon Musk than Donald Trump.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Sort of suggesting that what happened almost 80 years ago, I think 80 years ago next year, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, now it's okay. Kind of trying to blow off the impact of that.
No, that's not what they were saying at all. This is the clip you played.
Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's really not something that, you know. So it's not as scary as people think, basically.
This implies, out of context, that Elon was saying nuclear war isn't scary. It was a lie that was turned into a meme and tweeted by left-wing shills like our very own champion of every trendy lefty cause known to man here in Australia, Craig Foster, who smugly wrote, "Imagine someone saying this to you and you just nod along." So even when Trump isn't speaking, when it's someone else speaking, Trump is still the bad guy. So here's what they actually said in full context in this bit of the discussion on the threat of nuclear war and the safety of nuclear energy. Trump had just said that he thought the biggest threat to humanity was nuclear war, not climate change. And he said everything had to be done to reduce conflicts and avoid World War III. He said America needs a strong president who can sit down with world leaders and negotiate peace and nuclear non-proliferation. Elon then raised the point that nuclear weapons and nuclear energy were very, very different things, and then began to make the case to Trump for how safe nuclear energy is.
There's the bad side of nuclear, which is a nuclear war, very bad side, but there's also, I think, nuclear electricity generation is underrated.
You're right.
And it's actually, you know, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. So it's underrated as an electricity source, and I think it's something that's worth reconsidering. But there's so much regulation that people can't get it done. So like after Fukushima happened in Japan, like people were asking me in California, you know, are we worried about like a nuclear cloud coming from Japan? I'm like, no, that's crazy. It's not even dangerous in Fukushima. I actually flew there and ate locally grown vegetables on TV to prove it. And I donated a solar water treatment, a solar powered system for a water treatment plant. And
yeah, but you haven't been feeling so well lately, and I'm worried about it.
No, but I mean,
I'm only kidding.
It's fine, you know. It's like Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's really not something that, you know.
So CNN just point blank lied. Point blank, deliberately lied to their audience again. Unreal. Other coverage on CNN made fun of the technical glitch at the start of the event, caused by so many people logging on, a point that CNN just conveniently left out of their mockery.
With 40 minutes of silence and then a bropocalypse of politics, no matter how you frame it or what caused the glitch, what was finally said between Donald Trump and Elon Musk at last night's Big X event can largely be defined as a rant filled with familiar lies and lines of attack.
Right. Lies. Okay. Then they proceeded to play clips from the discussion that expressed opinions, not lies. But the left have trouble telling the difference between misinformation and opinions that disagree with their opinions. They think they're the same thing, which is why we never want them controlling censorship. And didn't you love the little sexist dig at men, calling it a bro-apocalypse of politics? Oh, so funny. Was that a microaggression? Ouch. Meanwhile, over at Channel 10's American parent company, Paramount CBS, it was, just as you'd expect, as biased as any episode of The Project. Listen both to what they say and the way they say it.
Donald Trump is working to grab attention back from Kamala Harris. He will hold 2 campaign stops in battleground states later this week after failing to land any significant rhetorical punches against Harris during a rambling 2-hour interview with Elon Musk. What listeners did get was a 40-minute technical delay and an earful of talking points from the former president on immigration, foreign dictators, and the economy. Meanwhile, Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz is on the trail solo for the first time, pushing for union votes while defending his military record.
Donald Trump, bad, bad, bad. Meanwhile, Kamala's running mate, good, good, good. It's pathetic. A look at the data on who watched the X discussion helps make clear why they are freaking out in the Democrat-leaning mainstream media in the US. Almost half of those who tuned in to the Musk-Trump discussion were female. That is unusual on X and especially on YouTube, where conservative content is concerned. Women don't seem to tune in as much as men. But what must be terrifying the Democrats even more is that 70% of those who tuned in were aged between 25 and 34. If Trump gets just a little more of the youth vote, the black vote or the female vote, the Democrats are toast. Maybe the Democrats should listen to this wise TikTok elder, Dr. Dee Curtis. Her comment on the discussion was shared widely across social media and amplified by other prominent African-American commentators like the Hodge twins. And her point is excellent.
When I got on X this morning, I saw all of these negative headlines from our media about how bad the interview was. Instead of the Democrat Party constantly bashing Donald Trump, you know what they need to do? This is what I say to them. You say the same things. You address the same issues. You address inflation. You address the war. You address freedom of speech that you guys are trying so hard to remove from everyone. When you address those same issues, or if you address those same issues, then your party platform would be about issues and not about Donald Trump. But you know why I listened to the whole thing? Because he talked about things that were important to Americans. Democrats, start talking about things that are important to Americans and stop pandering. Stop saying you're going to give away something for free.
So maybe the tide will start to turn back to Trump as Kamala's honeymoon period subsides. It's not showing up in the polls quite yet, though. Trump remains about 2.5 percentage points behind Harris this week in the 538.com summary of all the polls. We'll check in next week and see if things are starting to turn around. You can catch us here on The Other Side every Friday night from 7 p.m. on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's absolutely free. Just hit the subscribe button and the little bell too, and that will notify you when we post anything. And if you're feeling generous, feel free to send us a super thanks donation. You can do that by clicking the little $ thanks icon under the video frame on YouTube. You can also follow us on X, Twitter at The Other Side on X. It all helps. Okay, well, I couldn't let the week go without mentioning the B-girl. As much as I hate to admit, she has certainly struck a chord. I tweeted my thoughts on the breakdancing sensation that is Raygun this week and got almost 2 million views, a record for us on X, so she certainly got people talking. Even Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show was doing sketches.
Everyone's still talking about the competitor from Australia named Raygun. Let's take a look at her viral performance here. All right. Okay. She actually received 0 points for that. You have to wonder where Raygun is right now. What's that music coming from? I have to ask you this. How are you feeling since your performance? Oh my, oh no, I see, okay, yeah, please, no, yeah, I understand. No, very good, okay, Raygun, okay, thank you, Raygun. Raygun, I see you speak through your dance moves, I understand. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Oh yeah, that one, yeah. Me, you want me to dance with you? All right, I can do that,
That's comedian Rachel Dratch on Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show. Now look, I was a big fan of Eddie the Eel back in the day. Who could forget the immortal Roy Slavin and H.G. Nelson commentary of this legendary swim at the 2000 Olympics?
Equatorial Guinea has no swimming pools, and so it's probably wise to look for the end of the lane here. And you'll notice the camera
Look
at the
at these
bottom
double
of the ball.
turnations.
Let's have a look at this. Yes. A little bit slow, but he's got the right idea. He's got the mechanics of it down, Roy, and this is the Olympic spirit writ large here at the Sydney Aquatic Centre this morning in heat 1 of the 100 metres free, as we see a one-competitor race. Sole competitor from Equatorial Guinea, Eric Musambani. Roy, bring it home. Bring the boy home, Roy.
It's only the clock is beating now, HG.
Those were the days. That's the Olympic spirit. Get in and have a go. If you're the best your country's got to offer, go for it. So I was all set to support Rachel for having a go, for giving it a crack, for showing the Aussie spirit of being able to have a laugh. But then we got roused on. We were told we were being sexist for criticising her, and the AOC made it all about gender and her difficult past. And then we started looking at Raygun's academic background. She's a PhD at the esteemed Macquarie University, or what used to be the esteemed Macquarie University, before Australian universities became an export money-making machine and started accepting anyone from anywhere to study anything. We have a problem, folks, and it's not Raygun. Our unis are losing their status and reputation all around the world. Why? Well, partly because of the embracing of Marxist woke garbage like critical race and gender theory, but mainly just because of good old selling out. Aussie unis are now known for accepting anyone and for churning out degrees like sorbent churns out loo paper. Rachel Gunn is highly articulate. She seems to be hugely confident when she speaks about her work. Good on her. But her thesis on breakdancing was, well, as interesting as her breakdancing. Here's an excerpt. I use analytic autoethnography and interviews with scene members in collaboration with theoretical frameworks offered by Deleuze and Guattari, Butler, Bourdieu, and other feminist and post-structuralist philosophers to critically examine how the capacities of bodies are constituted and shaped in Sydney's breakdancing scene, and to also locate the potentiality for moments of transgression. Well, that's clear. I feel it's a highly economically efficient use of our national academic resources to ponder the feminist philosophies of breakdancing, don't you? Apart from that, I haven't got a single clue what the hell she was talking about. But that's okay, because in the very next line of this particular paper, she clarifies it. In other words, she says, I conceptualize the breaking body as not a body constituted through regulations and assumptions, but as an assemblage open to new rhizomatic connections. Now, I don't know about you, but she's really giving me a pain in my assemblage with that academic verbiage and nonsensical waffle, and my rhizomatic connections aren't feeling too good either. In fact, I had to look up what that meant in the good old Webster's dictionary. Rhizomatic, adjective of, relating to, or resembling a rhizome. Great, very helpful. Thanks, Merriam-Webster dictionary people. So what is a rhizome? A somewhat elongated, usually horizontal subterranean plant stem that is often thickened by deposits of reserve food material, produces shoots above and roots below. Do you get the feeling that we're not meant to ever understand what the hell she's talking about? All this comes from Dr. Gunn's article entitled, Don't Worry, It's Just a Girl, Negotiating and Challenging Gendered Assumptions in Sydney's Breakdancing Scene. You know, we can laugh, folks, but this is real. One of Australia's top universities has become so devoid of quality academic standards that it's using your taxpayer money and the money that hardworking students and their parents pay to build a mountain of BS built on woke word salad and hand out degrees. Not just bachelor's degrees, but PhDs to people doing theses on made-up stuff like this. Now, I mean Rachel Gunn no ill will. However, I would just ask this one question. Why is a middle-aged woman competing in breakdancing at the Olympic Games? She's not a 16-year-old or even 26-year-old just having a go, with years ahead of her to improve. She's a 36-year-old senior academic and professor. Why isn't she coaching and training a younger woman and really helping the feminist sisterhood in the very, very important field of bee dancing by mentoring someone who can actually breakdance and who might score more than 0-0? Now again, I don't know Rachel Gunn, But I do feel, more generally speaking, that there is something not quite right and a little narcissistic and selfish with some millennials who just don't want to grow up. Now, please don't tell us when we criticise people who are of low capability in a sport or an art that we're not allowed to express an opinion because we might hurt their feelings, or that we're being sexist and misogynist. I'm not criticising her because she's a woman or criticising her personhood. I'm expressing a valid opinion about her dancing and her writing. And that must remain an okay thing to do in our culture, especially when it's taxpayer subsidised. I welcome criticism so I can improve. No more participation medals and equity, folks. Australia needs more hierarchy, not less. More competition, not less. More excellence to celebrate, not less. And we can handle the criticism and rise above and improve. Our Olympic team, whose focus we should be putting our focus on, did us proud in these games. 53 medals, 4th place in the world, 18 gold medals. As strong a result as our home games back in 2000. It's okay to celebrate excellence and exceptionalism because our highest achievers lift all of us. And that's all we have time for this week on The Other Side. Your weekly summary of the best news and commentary without the woke. Please remember to tell your friends about the show. Please, that is by far the best way to help us out. Also, please follow us on X and YouTube and smash those like, subscribe, and every other button on all the platforms that you can. Do sign up and subscribe to piavpn.com/otherside for our fantastic 83% offer. And you're helping the show out when you do that too. We drop a new show every Friday night at 7 p.m. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you never miss any of our content. Hit that subscribe button and hit the little bell. That's very important because that'll notify you whenever we post new content, and it's all free to do that. If you do like what we're doing though, and you want to support us by clicking the little $thanks button and make a super thanks donation so we can keep delivering, that'd be great. I'm Dave Pellowe. We'll catch you next week.